Dr. Julian Thorne had a routine. He woke at 5:45 a.m. He drank exactly 2 cups of black coffee, no sugar, because sugar was for people who hadn't accepted the inherent bitterness of existence. He ironed his shirt with military precision, knotted his tie in a half-Windsor, and drove to St. Mary's Memorial Hospital in his sensible gray sedan that he had chosen specifically because it was the least exciting car on the lot. Julian was a man of science. He believed in data, in synapses firing correctly, in the predictable rhythm of a human heartbeat. He did not believe in fate, karma, horoscopes, or the chaotic universe's apparent desire to ruin his Tuesday afternoons. He especially did not believe in love at first sight, which he had once described in a peer-reviewed paper as a neurochemical misfire exacerbated by poor decision-making and ambient lighting. His colleagues called him Dr. Sunshine behind his back. This was sarcasm. Julian stood in the hallway of St. Mary's Memorial Hospital, clutching a clipboard like it was a shield against the impending storm of human interaction that constituted his daily rounds. He adjusted his glasses, wire-rimmed, sensible, chosen because they made him look academically intimidating, according to the optometrist who had clearly been trying to make a sale, and prepared himself for the gauntlet. Room 301. Mrs. Patterson, recovering from a minor stroke, who insisted on showing him photos of her grandchildren every single visit. Julian had seen so many photos of little Timmy that he could pick the child out of a lineup. Room 302. Mr. Abernathy, 87, who kept trying to escape to the cafeteria because he was convinced the Jell-O was medicinal and prescribed specifically for him. Room 303, empty, thank God. Room 304. The new admission. The one that would change everything, though Julian didn't know it yet because, as previously established, he did not believe in foreshadowing. Dr. Thorne, Nurse Sarah Chun said, popping her head out of room 304 like a prairie dog emerging from its burrow. She was grinning. Sarah always grinned when she was about to deliver bad news wrapped in amusement, like a grenade tucked inside a gift basket. He's awake, and he's energetic. Energetic, Julian repeated, his voice flatter than an EKG flatline. Define energetic. Define? Sarah laughed, the kind of laugh that said, "Oh, you sweet, naive man." She pushed the door open for him with a theatrical flourish. Just go in. But maybe check your pulse first. Yours is about to spike. My pulse does not spike, Julian said, with the confidence of a man who had never met patient 402. He stepped into the room. The first thing he noticed was the jelly. Specifically, a small cup of green hospital jelly that was being manipulated with the focused intensity of a sculptor working on a masterpiece. The patient was sitting up in bed, tongue poking out in concentration, carefully folding the gelatinous mass into what appeared to be an attempt at a swan. It looked more like a melted frog, but the effort was undeniable. The patient himself was a young man, perhaps 28, with hair the color of toasted wheat that defied gravity in a way that suggested expensive styling product rather than bedhead. He had a jawline that belonged on a magazine cover and cheekbones that could cut glass. His eyes were bright, alert, and the precise shade of honey gold that romance novelists spent 3 paragraphs describing. Those eyes were currently locked onto Julian with the intensity of a heat-seeking missile. "Ah!" the patient exclaimed, dropping the jelly. It wobbled sadly on the sheet, the swan frog collapsing into a puddle of green despair. The hero arrives. Julian blinked. In 12 years of neurology, he had been called many things. Doctor, sir. Hey, you, the one with the glasses. Once memorably, Satan by a patient coming out of anesthesia. Never hero. I am Dr. Thorne, Julian said, stepping forward with his clipboard raised like a knight's shield. I am your neurologist. I am responsible for monitoring your cognitive recovery. I am not a hero. Semantics, the patient said, waving a hand with the casual dismissiveness of someone who had never read a medical ethics handbook. He had a charming smile, the kind that probably got him out of speeding tickets into exclusive restaurants and absolutely positively into trouble with equal ease. I'm Leo, or at least my driver's license says Leo. My memory is a bit foggy on the details, but I'll tell you what's crystal clear. Your neurological assessment? Julian asked hopefully. Your face, Leo said, pointing at Julian with both index fingers like a pair of finger guns. You, sir, are the most handsome man I have ever seen, and I'm including my reflection in that competition. Julian felt a hot flush creep up his neck, starting somewhere around his collar and racing toward his ears like a brush fire in August. He was 34. He had been hit on before, rarely, awkwardly, usually by confused patients emerging from sedation. He was a decent-looking man, if one liked sharp jawlines, perpetual dark circles, and the general aura of a man who had replaced sleep with journal articles. But this was a patient. This was a violation of every ethical code in every medical handbook ever written, including the ones in languages Julian couldn't read. Mr. Leo, Julian said, stepping forward and checking the heart rate monitor with aggressive professionalism. You suffered a moderate concussion and retrograde amnesia following your accident. The CT scan shows no hemorrhaging, which is good. Your intracranial pressure is normal. However, you appear to be experiencing some disinhibition, which is common with disinhibition, Leo repeated, tasting the word. Is that the medical term for saying what you feel? Because I feel like you should know that your eyes are the exact color of the ocean during a storm. Julian gripped his pen so hard it creaked. Do you remember how you got here? Leo tapped his chin thoughtfully, his brow furrowing in genuine concentration. I remember. Lights. Lots of lights. Colored ones, spinning. Music. Singing. I was singing, I think. Something dramatic. Whitney Houston. No, Celine Dion. Definitely Celine. He closed his eyes. My heart will go on. I remember a very high note, like impossibly high, and then gravity betraying me. You fell off a stage at a karaoke bar, Julian corrected, noting the vitals on his clipboard with the precision of a man who was definitely not thinking about his eyes being compared to a stormy ocean. You were performing, and I use that word loosely, at a venue called Sing Your Heart Out on 5th Street. You attempted a key change. You stepped backward. You fell off the stage and hit your head on a floor-mounted speaker stand. Ouch! Leo winced, touching the bandage on his temple. Then the grin returned, irrepressible as a sunrise. Well, if hitting my head on a speaker while performing the greatest love ballad of all time made me meet you, maybe it was worth it. Maybe Celine herself guided my fall. Celine Dion did not guide your fall. Gravity and poor spatial awareness guided your fall. Gravity is just the universe pulling things together, Leo said, his eyes sparkling. Like us. Julian stopped writing. He looked up over the rim of his glasses. Mr. Leo, please, I need you to take this seriously. Amnesia is a significant neurological event. You cannot remember basic biographical information. We don't know the extent of the memory loss yet. I am taking it seriously, doctor, Leo said, leaning forward with an expression of mock solemnity. The hospital gown slipped slightly off one shoulder, revealing a collarbone that had no business being that distracting. Julian aggressively looked at the clipboard. The clipboard was safe. The clipboard did not have collarbones. I am seriously considering asking for your phone number. Is that against hospital policy? Because I feel like it should be, but honestly, I'm willing to risk it for love. What's the worst that could happen? A tribunal? There is no love, Julian said, perhaps a bit too quickly, the words tumbling out like they were fleeing a burning building. There is doctor-patient confidentiality. There is medical care. There is professional distance. Professional distance, Leo repeated, nodding sagely, as if Julian had just explained the theory of relativity. So what you're saying is there's a distance, and distances can be closed. I'm hearing an opportunity. That is not what I'm saying. Interesting. So once I'm discharged, the professional distance expires? Like a coupon? I'm writing that down. Leo reached for a pen on the bedside table. You are not writing anything down, Julian said, snatching the pen away from Leo's reaching hand with the reflexes of a man who had confiscated many writing implements from many patients, though never for this particular reason. You need rest. Your brain needs to heal. The hippocampus is responsible for memory consolidation, and yours has been traumatized. My hippocampus, Leo whispered reverently. Even my brain parts sound romantic when you say them. That is not. Say amygdala, Leo requested. I will not. Please? For science. Goodbye, Mr. Leo, Julian said, turning on his heel and marching toward the door with the determined stride of a man retreating from a battle he was not equipped to fight. Wait, Leo called after him. When are you coming back? For hours, Julian said over his shoulder. To check your pupils. 4 hours. Leo looked genuinely horrified, as if Julian had just told him Christmas was cancelled. That's 240 minutes. That's 14,400 seconds. I counted. In my head, right now, is being apart from you for that long safe for my recovery? Because my heart rate is definitely going to drop. Julian paused at the door. Against every instinct, against every screaming neuron in his well-trained brain, he turned around. Your heart rate will be fine. It won't be the same without you monitoring it, Leo said, pressing a hand to his chest. His eyes were wide and earnest. Every beep will be a beep of loneliness. Julian walked out. He closed the door. He leaned against the wall and exhaled like a man surfacing from deep water. His pulse was 94 beats per minute. He checked. Twice. Smooth, Sarah said from the nurse's station 5 feet away. She was eating a strawberry yogurt with the casual air of someone watching a soap opera. He asked me if you were single, by the way, about 30 seconds after regaining consciousness. Before he asked where he was. Before he asked his own name. His first coherent question was about your relationship status. What did you tell him? Julian demanded. I told him you were married to your work. He said he likes a challenge. Sarah scooped yogurt. He also asked me your coffee order. I told him black, no sugar. He said, of course. He's sweet enough already. I nearly dropped my stethoscope. Julian groaned, pushing off the wall with both hands. He has amnesia, Sarah. He doesn't know who he is. He probably doesn't remember his mother's name. He's latching onto the first friendly face he sees. His transference. His textbook. It's in Chapter 7 of Kaplan's Neuropsychiatry, 3rd edition. Aha, Sarah said, not looking up from her yogurt. Well, transference or not, he asked me to bring him a mirror so he could fix his hair before your next visit. Most patients ask for water, ice chips, pain medication. He asked for hair gel. I had to explain that we don't stock hair gel in the hospital. What did he say? He asked if the gift shop sells any. Sarah grinned. It doesn't, but he convinced the volunteer to check. Julian adjusted his glasses so aggressively they nearly flew off his face. I'm going to my office. If he tries to escape, sedate him. Can't sedate him, document. No medical indication. Also, he already charmed the security guard into giving him extra pudding. Larry. You know Larry, the one who arm wrestled the vending machine. Larry called him a delight. Larry has never called anyone a delight in his life. Julian was already walking. Fast. Very fast. Not running. Doctors didn't run unless there was a code blue. This was a code. Something. Code yellow? Code. Devastatingly attractive patient is dismantling my emotional walls? There was no code for that. Julian would have to invent one. He made it to his office, closed the door, and sat in his chair. He stared at the wall. The wall had his diplomas on it. Harvard Medical School. Johns Hopkins residency. Board certification. Years of achievement. Years of discipline. Years of building a life that was ordered, predictable, and completely, utterly under control. None of those diplomas had prepared him for Leo. Julian put his head on his desk. It's transference, he told the wood grain. It's just transference. The wood grain did not respond. This was, on balance, preferable to the alternative. Over the next 3 days, Dr. Julian Thorne's life became a sitcom written by a sadist with a medical degree. Leo was not a difficult patient in the clinical sense. His vitals were stable. His neurological exams showed consistent improvement. The CT follow-up was clean, no edema, no bleeding, no structural damage beyond the initial concussion. The amnesia was the only remaining issue. He remembered his first name, his birthday, March 15th, the Ides of March, which is very dramatic, don't you think, Julian? And that he hated cilantro with a passion that bordered on religious conviction. But he couldn't recall his last name, his address, his occupation, whether he had any family, or virtually anything about the life he had been living before Celine Dion and gravity conspired to send him into Julian's orbit. What he did remember, with crystal clarity and zero hesitation, was his infatuation with Dr. Julian Thorne. Day 1 had been the opening salvo. Day 2 was the escalation. It started with small things. When Julian entered the room to check Leo's reflexes, Leo would hum a romantic soundtrack under his breath. Julian identified at least 3 separate movie themes, The Notebook, Titanic, and what he was fairly certain was the love theme from Jurassic Park, which was an unusual choice but oddly effective. When Julian wrote notes on his clipboard, Leo would lean sideways in bed, craning his neck to read them upside down, and comment on Julian's handwriting. So masculine. Very decisive loops on the lowercase g. What does that say about you psychologically? Actually, don't tell me. I want to discover it myself. When Julian checked Leo's pupil dilation with a penlight, Leo stared directly into Julian's eyes and whispered, "I see forever." "You see the light," Julian corrected. "Track it left." "Tracking," Leo said dreamily. By day 2, it escalated significantly. Julian entered room 304 at 9 a.m. sharp, because Julian was always sharp, and found the bed empty. The sheets were rumpled. The monitors were disconnected. The 4-stand was standing alone like a lonely flagpole. Julian's heart stopped. His medical training kicked in immediately. Elopement, wandering patient, disoriented amnesiac loose in a hospital. Liability lawsuit. CNN headline. Career-ending investigation. He spun around, already reaching for his pager, and found Leo standing by the window in his hospital gown and socks, holding a bouquet of balloons. Heart-shaped balloons. Red ones. At least 7 of them. "Happy Wednesday," Leo said, beaming like a man who had not just given his neurologist a minor cardiac event. Julian placed a hand on his own chest. His heart was hammering. "Where did you get those?" "The volunteer downstairs. Patricia. Lovely woman. Smells like lavender and has opinions about the royal family." Leo floated over, the balloons bobbing around his head like a cheerful, heart-shaped halo. "I told her it was our anniversary." "Our anniversary," Julian said. "Of meeting. Day 2. I'm counting." "You lied to a hospital volunteer." "I prefer creative communication," Leo said, stopping directly in front of Julian. "Close. Too close." Julian could smell the generic hospital soap, and underneath it, something warm and specific to Leo that his traitorous brain categorized as pleasant. "Do you like them?" Leo asked. "I asked for blue to match your eyes. Patricia didn't have blue, so I got red. Red is passion. I looked it up on the tablet they gave me for cognitive exercises. I was supposed to be doing memory puzzles. I did one. Then I Googled, what do balloon colors mean romantically? A red heart balloon bumped against Julian's nose. He did not flinch. He was a professional. "Mr. Leo," Julian said, deploying his sternest voice, the one he used on interns who contaminated lab samples. "You cannot leave your room without clearance from the nursing staff. You are on fall precautions. You have a head injury. And you absolutely cannot lie to the volunteers." "It wasn't a lie," Leo said, tying the balloon strings to the bed rail with a surprisingly competent knot. "In my heart, it's true. Patricia believed me. She even gave me a card." He produced a small card from behind his back. It read, "Happy anniversary. Love is the best medicine." "Patricia is an enabler," Julian muttered. "Patricia is a visionary," Leo corrected. "Besides, I needed to ask you something important." Julian braced himself. He squared his shoulders. He gripped his clipboard. "If it's about my phone number, the answer is no." "No, it's not about your phone number." Julian exhaled. "It's about dinner." Julian inhaled. "Hospital food is tragic, Julian. Leo said, sitting on the edge of the bed and patting the space next to him with an inviting hand. Can I call you Julian? The name tag says Dr. Thorne, but Julian rolls off the tongue like silk on a summer evening. It does not. It does. Say it with me. Julian. See? Silk. Leo continued patting the bed. Sit, please. My doctor said no walking without supervision, so you have to come to me. Doctor's orders. Technically, your orders. Julian knew he should say no. He knew he should maintain the 2-meter professional distance recommended by absolutely no medical guideline but strongly suggested by his sense of self-preservation. He knew he should call security or administration or possibly his therapist, whom he had been meaning to call for 3 years. Instead, he sat, just for a moment, to check the patient's stability. Purely clinical. I ordered in, Leo whispered conspiratorially, glancing at the door like a spy in a thriller. You what? From that Italian place down the street. The one on Elm. The one with the garlic bread that smells like heaven. I can see it from the window. It has a red awning. You ordered food into a hospital room. I had help, Leo admitted. Larry the security guard. He owed me a favor. What favor could you possibly have done for Larry? You've been here 2 days. I listened to him talk about his divorce for 45 minutes. Leo said solemnly. That man has been through a lot, Julian. His ex-wife took the good couch. Julian opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Leo reached under his pillow with the theatrical timing of a magician producing a rabbit, and pulled out a Tupperware container. It was warm. It smelled incredible. Julian's stomach, the traitor, growled audibly. Pasta alla norma, Leo announced, popping the lid. Steam rose like a fragrant promise. Patricia told me it's the best thing on the menu. I also got garlic bread, obviously, and tiramisu, for later, if you're good. This is insane, Julian said. But he didn't stand up. He didn't leave. He sat there on a hospital bed, next to a brain-injured patient who had orchestrated a food delivery operation involving a grieving security guard and an elderly volunteer named Patricia. Open up, Leo said, holding a forkful of pasta toward Julian's mouth. Julian looked at the fork. He looked at Leo's expectant face. Leo's eyes were wide, devoid of the usual guardedness that people carried like armor. There was no pretense, no game, no calculation. Just pure, unfiltered affection, as transparent and unstoppable as sunlight through a window. It was terrifying. It was intoxicating. It was absolutely, categorically inappropriate. Julian opened his mouth. He ate the pasta. It was, objectively, the best pasta alla norma he had ever tasted. Well? Leo asked, leaning forward. It's adequate, Julian lied, his taste buds screaming mutiny. Leo laughed, a bright, clear sound that seemed to chase away the sterile smell of antiseptic and replace it with something human and warm. Adequate. High praise from Dr. Thorne. I'll take it. They ate, together, on the hospital bed. Julian told himself it was monitoring the patient's appetite. He told himself it was therapeutic engagement. He told himself many things. None of them explained why he was smiling. So, Leo said, twirling pasta. Tell me about yourself, Julian. There's nothing to tell. Lies. Everything about you tells a story. The glasses say intellectual. The tie says put together. The dark circles say doesn't sleep enough. The tiny stain on your left cuff that you think nobody notices says human being who spilled coffee this morning. Julian looked at his cuff. There was, indeed, a tiny coffee stain. He hadn't noticed. You're observant, Julian said, which was both a compliment and an accusation. I have nothing to do but observe, Leo said. I can't remember my life, so I'm studying the most interesting thing in this room. The heart monitor? You, Julian. I'm studying you. Julian looked down at his pasta. He was not blushing. He was experiencing localized vasodilation due to the warm food. Why? Leo asked suddenly, his voice softer. Why are you doing this? The stethoscope thing, the brain scans, the clipboard. Why neurology? Julian blinked. Patients didn't ask him this. They asked about their test results, their prognosis, their insurance coverage. Nobody asked why. Because the brain is the last frontier, Julian said quietly. We've mapped the ocean floor. We've photographed black holes. But the human brain, 3 pounds of tissue that contains everything you are, everything you've ever felt or thought or dreamed, we barely understand it. It's the most complex object in the known universe. He stopped. He had said too much. He looked at Leo, expecting boredom or polite disinterest. Leo was staring at him like Julian had just recited poetry. Say hippocampus again, Leo whispered. Absolutely not. Julian stood up, grabbing his clipboard. I have rounds. Julian, Leo called as he reached the door. Julian paused, hand on the handle. Thank you for the dinner. You're the one who ordered it. I know, but you stayed to eat it. That's the part that mattered. Julian left. He made it 18 steps down the hallway before he realized he was still holding a piece of garlic bread. He ate it in the stairwell, alone, standing between floors 3 and 4, wondering when he had lost control of his own hospital. Day 3 brought the escape attempt. Julian was in his office, reviewing MRI scans, when his pager exploded with messages. Patient 402 not in room. Patient 402 seen heading toward elevator. Patient 402 has acquired a wheelchair. Patient 402 racing wheelchair down hallway. Larry is cheering. Julian threw down his pen and sprinted. Doctors didn't run, but this was no longer a standard medical situation. This was a containment operation. He found Leo in the hospital atrium, sitting in a stolen wheelchair next to the grand piano that some benefactor had donated for patient morale. Leo was wearing his hospital gown, a pair of sunglasses he had apparently charmed from a visitor, and a blanket draped over his shoulders like a cape. He was playing the piano. Julian didn't even know he could play the piano. The amnesia had apparently not touched his musical abilities, because he was playing Chopin. Beautifully, flawlessly. A small crowd had gathered. Patients, visitors, a janitor who had stopped mopping to listen. Leo saw Julian approach and, without breaking the melody, transitioned seamlessly into Can't Help Falling in Love by Elvis Presley. Wise men say, Leo sang softly, his fingers dancing over the keys. Only fools rush in. Julian stopped walking. The crowd parted around him like he was Moses at the Red Sea. But I can't help falling in love with you, Leo sang, looking directly at Julian over the top of the sunglasses. He smiled, not the flirtatious grin but something gentler, more vulnerable, more dangerous. The crowd went awe. Larry the security guard wiped his eye. This is better than my wedding, he whispered to nobody. Mr. Leo, Julian said, and his voice cracked slightly on the name, which he would deny until his dying breath. You need to return to your room. One more verse, Leo asked. Now. Leo played one more chord, a dramatic, lingering one, stood up, and bowed to his audience. They applauded. An elderly woman in a wheelchair threw a tissue packet at him like a rose at a concert. Julian wheeled him back to room 304 in furious silence. Well, Julian was silent. Leo was humming the Elvis song and waving at nurses like a homecoming queen on a parade float. Once inside, Julian closed the door and turned to face him. What were you thinking? I was thinking about you, Leo said simply. You could have fallen. You could have re-injured yourself. You could have swept you off your feet, Leo suggested. Because from the look on your face when I was playing, I think it worked. It did not work. Your left eye twitched. That's your tell, Julian. I've been cataloging your expressions. The left eye twitch means you're feeling something and trying not to. I am not. Julian's left eye twitched. He clamped a hand over it. I am going to recommend psychiatric evaluation. For you or for me? Leo asked innocently. By day 4, the hospital staff had placed official bets. Sarah had set up a spreadsheet. The odds were heavily in favor of Julian caving, defined as any physical contact beyond a handshake, within the week. Larry had bet $50 on day 5. Patricia, the volunteer, had bet on day 4 and brought champagne, which was confiscated but appreciated. Julian was fighting a war on two fronts: his professional ethics and his own loneliness. Because the truth that lived in the quiet spaces between heartbeats. Julian Thorne was lonely. He didn't date. He claimed it was because of his schedule, but the schedule was an excuse. The truth was that he found most people exhausting. They wanted things: time, attention, emotional labor, conversations about feelings. Julian preferred the quiet predictability of neurons and the uncomplicated companionship of published research. Leo wanted nothing but Julian's presence. He didn't ask Julian to be different or lighter or more fun. He just wanted him there. And somehow that demand, the simplest demand anyone had ever made of him, felt lighter than anything else in Julian's life. On day 5, Leo was cleared for supervised short walks. Julian was assigned as supervisor, ostensibly to monitor Leo's vestibular function and gait stability, but actually because Sarah had accidentally removed every other doctor from the assignment rotation. They walked down the corridor. Leo leaned lightly on Julian's arm, and Julian pretended not to notice how perfectly Leo's hand fit in the crook of his elbow. "Left foot, right foot," Julian instructed, watching Leo's gait. "Good. Step length is consistent. No lateral deviation. Balance seems stable." "I feel stable," Leo said. He looked up at Julian. "When I'm with you, Leo, please. I'm just stating a medical fact. You make me stable. That's therapeutic. You should prescribe yourself. Take 1 Julian, 3 times daily, with food." "That is not how prescriptions work." They reached the hospital cafeteria. It was lunch hour, and the room was bustling with the particular brand of chaos unique to hospital cafeterias. A combination of exhausted doctors, worried families, and one very determined toddler throwing crackers at a service dog. Julian usually ate a protein bar at his desk, hunched over paperwork like a gargoyle with a nutrition plan. But Leo had insisted on real food, eaten at a real table, like real humans do, and Julian had run out of reasons to refuse. They sat at a small table in the corner by the window. Leo had a salad. Julian had a turkey sandwich he wasn't hungry for but had purchased because going through the line without buying something felt pathological. "So," Leo said, stabbing a cherry tomato with his fork. The tomato rolled away. He stabbed it again. It rolled again. He glared at it. "So," he repeated, abandoning the tomato to its freedom. "I've been thinking about my past." Julian's sandwich paused halfway to his mouth. "And I've been trying to picture it. My apartment, my job, the people in my life." Leo pushed his salad around. "There's a blank spot, a big one, like a fog over a city. I can see the outline of buildings, but I can't read the street signs." "That's actually a very accurate metaphor for retrograde amnesia," Julian said. "Thank you. I'm surprisingly articulate for a man who can't remember his postal code." Leo looked up from his salad. "But there's a feeling, underneath the fog, a feeling of waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For something better," Leo said simply. He reached across the table and covered Julian's hand with his own. His fingers were warm, slightly calloused, musician's hands, Julian noted clinically, and they fit over Julian's with a naturalness that defied the awkwardness of the setting. "I think I was waiting for you." Julian's sandwich fell from his other hand. It landed on his plate with a sad, meaty thud. "Leo," Julian said, not moving his hand, which was a problem. "You can't know that." "I do know it. Look, Julian. I know the rules. Doctor, patient, ethics committee, professional boundaries, malpractice insurance, blah blah blah." Leo leaned forward, his eyes earnest. "But what if the universe gave me amnesia for a reason? What if I was stuck in a life that wasn't right, a life that was just fine, and the crash reset the system? Like when your computer freezes, and you turn it off and on again, and suddenly everything runs better." "That is not how neurology works," Julian whispered, but his hand was still under Leo's. His fingers had, without his permission, turned upward to press against Leo's palm. "Maybe not neurology," Leo conceded. "Maybe theology, or just logic of the heart." "There is no logic of the heart. The heart is a muscle, It pumps blood. Then why is yours beating so fast? Leo asked, pressing his thumb against Julian's wrist. Right over the pulse point. I can feel it, Julian. 92 beats per minute, at least. That's not resting rate. Julian pulled his hand away, but gently, so gently it was almost a caress. Leo, if we do this, if I cross this line, and then you remember everything, and you remember you hate doctors, or you're a Republican, or you put ketchup on steak. I feel very strongly that I don't put ketchup on steak, Leo said. Or you have a fiancé, or a wife, or a husband. Julian forced the word out. You might remember a husband. Leo tilted his head, genuinely considering this. Husband, that's a big word. Husband. He tested it again, rolling it around his mouth. No, I don't think so. If I had a husband, he'd be here. He'd be sitting in this terrible cafeteria chair, bringing me garlic bread and fighting the cherry tomatoes on my behalf. Maybe he's stuck in traffic, Julian suggested weakly. For 5 days. Leo laughed. No, Julian. I don't have a husband. I have a gut feeling. And my gut feeling says the only ring I want on my finger is one that comes from a man who describes the hippocampus like it's a love poem. Julian stood up abruptly. The chair scraped against the linoleum with a sound like a startled cat. He needed distance. The air in the cafeteria felt too thick, too charged, too full of things he wasn't ready to name. I have to go. Rounds. Julian. I get off shift at 7, Julian said. He hadn't planned to say it. The words had bypassed his prefrontal cortex entirely and gone straight from his heart to his mouth, which was exactly the kind of neurological event he should be monitoring in himself. Leo's face transformed. It went from concern to radiant in the space of a heartbeat, lighting up like a stadium at night. 7, Leo breathed. That's in 3 hours. There's a park across the street from the hospital, Julian continued, each word feeling like a step off a cliff. The one with the walking path. There's a bench under a large oak tree. I know it. I've seen it from my window. I watch the squirrels. I will be there, Julian said. At 7. For 10 minutes. To talk. As friends. Friends, Leo repeated, smiling the way people smile when they've just been handed exactly what they wanted and are pretending to be casual about it. Sure. Friends. Friends who hold hands over turkey sandwiches. 10 minutes, Julian warned, backing away. Don't be late. And wear actual shoes. I'll be early, Leo promised. And I'll wear my best socks. Julian turned and walked away, his heart hammering against his ribs like a bird trying to escape a cage. He felt guilty. He felt exhilarated. He felt like he was driving a car without brakes down a steep mountain road. And for the first time in his impeccably careful life, he didn't want to hit the brakes. He didn't even want to look for the brakes. He made it back to his office before his knees gave out. He sat in his chair, put his head in his hands, and stared at his desk, where his abandoned protein bar sat in its wrapper, untouched and judging him. 10 minutes, he told the protein bar. Just 10 minutes. It's nothing. It's insignificant. It's a rounding error in the grand scheme of a medical career. Sarah appeared in his doorway. She was holding a cup of coffee and wearing an expression of profound satisfaction. I heard you just asked a patient on a date, she said. It's not a date. It's a supervised conversation in a public space. Under an oak tree. At sunset. The timing of sunset is coincidental. Julian, Sarah said, handing him the coffee. I've known you for 6 years. You once described your ideal evening as reading a neuroimaging study in silence. You don't do oak trees at sunset. You don't do anything at sunset. You're usually in this office eating a sad protein bar. The protein bar is nutritionally balanced. The protein bar is depressing. Sarah leaned on the doorframe. He's good for you, Julian. I know it's complicated. I know the ethics are fuzzy. But that man in there? He looks at you like you hung the moon. I did not hang the moon. The moon is held in place by gravitational. Julian. He sighed. He took the coffee. He drank it. It was good. 10 minutes, he said again. That's all. Sarah smiled and left. Julian turned to face the wall of diplomas. Harvard, Johns Hopkins, board certification. None of them had prepared him for this. He drank his coffee. He checked his watch. It was 4:17 p.m., 2 hours and 43 minutes. He started counting. The park was cool. The evening air carrying the scent of rain and cut grass and the faint diesel exhaust from the bus route on Maple Street. The oak tree was enormous, its branches spreading overhead like a cathedral ceiling, dropping acorns on the bench beneath it with the irregular timing of a broken metronome. Julian sat on the bench. He had changed his tie. He told himself this was because the other one had a coffee stain, which was true, but the replacement tie was his best one. A deep blue silk that Sarah had once said brought out his eyes, and there was no medical justification for that choice. He checked his watch. 6:58 p.m. He checked it again. 6:58 p.m. and 32 seconds. Again. 6:59 p.m. An acorn hit him on the head. He brushed it off. The squirrels were mocking him. At 7 p.m. on the dot, because Leo, it turned out, took punctuality as seriously as a military operation. Leo appeared at the edge of the park path. He wasn't in hospital pajamas. He was wearing jeans that fit like they had been custom-tailored for the specific purpose of making Julian's brain short-circuit, and a button-down shirt in a soft sage green that Sarah had apparently smuggled in for him during her break. His hair was actually styled, with product that Larry had somehow obtained from the Walgreens across the street during a security perimeter check. He looked normal. He looked like a man who belonged in the world, walking through parks in the evening light, smiling at someone he cared about. Not a patient, not a chart number, person. "You came," Leo said, stopping in front of the bench. "I said I would," Julian replied. He didn't stand up. He was afraid that if he stood, he might do something reckless, like hug him, or worse, touch his face, or worst of all, admit that he had been counting the minutes. Leo sat down, not on the other end of the bench, not at a respectful, friendship-appropriate distance. He sat right next to Julian, close enough that their thighs pressed together through the fabric of their respective pants. Julian felt the heat of it like a brand. "So," Leo said, leaning back and looking up through the oak leaves at the sky. "Friends." "Friends," Julian agreed, his voice approximately 1 octave higher than intended. "This is nice," Leo said. "Quiet. No beeping machines. No fluorescent lights. No Sarah trying to sneak me extra Jell-O and then winking at me like we're co-conspirators." "Sarah is a menace," Julian said. "Sarah is a romantic," Leo corrected. "She told me you haven't had a date in 5 years. Julian's entire body went rigid. "She told you that?" "She volunteered the information. Enthusiastically. She also told me you spend every Friday night reading medical journals and eating Thai takeout alone. She said it with a level of sadness that suggested she considers this a crime against humanity. My Friday nights are perfectly fulfilling." "Julian." Leo turned to face him. His knee bumped against Julian's. Neither of them moved away. "She also told me that you volunteered to work Christmas last year, and Thanksgiving, and Valentine's Day," she said, and I quote, "He treats holidays like optional inconveniences. They are optional inconveniences. Thanksgiving is a logistical nightmare dressed up in gravy." Leo laughed. Julian felt the vibration of it through the bench, through the point where their shoulders touched, into his own chest. It felt like being tuned to a frequency he had never known existed. "Julian," Leo said, and his voice was different now, quieter. "I know I'm supposed to be the confused one, the one with the scrambled brain and the missing memories. But can I tell you something that doesn't feel confused at all?" Julian's mouth went dry. "You can. I think I love you." The words dropped into the evening air like stones into still water. They rippled outward, touching everything, changing the texture of the silence. Julian forgot to breathe. He remembered after 3 seconds, which was concerning from a medical standpoint. "Leo," he said, his voice rough, scraped raw by the effort of not saying something he couldn't take back. "You've known me for 5 days. Time doesn't matter," Leo said. Not really. Not when you meet the right person. It's not about duration. It's about intensity. It's about, I feel safe with you. I feel like I'm home. And I know that sounds crazy, because I can't even remember where my actual home is. But it does sound crazy, Julian said. But this bench right now with you? This feels more like home than anything in the fog. Julian looked at Leo's lips. He knew he shouldn't. He knew the ethics committee would convene an emergency session and flay him alive in front of a PowerPoint presentation about professional boundaries. He knew his career, his reputation, his carefully constructed identity as the rational doctor would crack down the middle like an egg. But Leo was looking at him with such raw, unguarded openness, such terrifying, beautiful trust. Julian had spent his life building walls. Walls of professionalism, walls of routine, walls of emotional distance. And Leo had walked through every single one of them like they were made of wet paper. Leo, Julian whispered. Julian, Leo breathed back. They leaned in. It was slow, tentative, gravitational. Julian closed his eyes. He could feel Leo's breath on his face, warm, slightly shaky. He could feel the pull, the inevitable collision of two orbits that had been circling each other for 5 impossible days. Their lips were a centimeter apart. Half a centimeter. A fraction. And then Leo froze. Julian pulled back, instantly alarmed. The doctor snapped into place over the man. Leo? What's wrong? Headache? Visual disturbance? Dizziness? Leo's hand went to his temple. His face, which seconds ago had been soft and open, twisted in pain. Real pain, the kind that crumpled foreheads and whitened knuckles. Oh, Leo gasped. Oh no. Talk to me. Scale of 1 to 10. Julian was already reaching for him, his fingers pressing against Leo's pulse point. It's not the pain, Leo said through gritted teeth. It's coming back. Julian went still. Memory? Yes. It's like a dam breaking. Water everywhere. Images. Sounds. Colors. Leo gripped Julian's arm, hard, his fingers digging in. Julian, I remember. Julian's heart, which had been soaring seconds ago, began its descent. A slow, controlled crash like a plane coming down with one engine. Then none. This was it. The spell was breaking. The fog was clearing. Leo would remember his real life, his real address, his real job, his real loves, and Julian would be just the doctor. The placeholder. The warm body who had been convenient while the brain rebooted. What do you remember? Julian asked. His voice was steady, professionally steady. The steadiness of a man holding himself together with both hands. Leo closed his eyes. Tears leaked out from under the lids, trailing down his cheeks. My name. My full name. Leo Vance. I remember I work in something creative. Design. Graphic design. I remember I have an apartment. 6th floor. I remember I have a cat. A fat orange cat named Machi, who knocks things off tables and looks you dead in the eye while he does it. That's good, Julian said softly, his thumb moving in small circles on Leo's wrist without his conscious permission. That's very good, Leo. The memories are returning in clusters. That's a positive prognostic sign. And Leo's voice broke, cracked right down the middle like Julian's heart. And I remember I'm married. The world stopped. Not metaphorically. Julian was aware that the planet continued its rotation, that the birds in the oak tree continued their evening arguments, that somewhere in the hospital behind them, Larry was probably arm wrestling the vending machine again. But in Julian's personal universe, everything ground to a halt. Married. He slowly, carefully, removed his arm from Leo's grip. He stood up. He needed to stand. He needed the vertical distance, the physical separation, the reminder that he was a doctor and this was a patient and the last 5 days had been a fever dream from which he was now waking. I see, Julian said. His voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. From another room. From another life. Well, that clarifies things. Julian, wait. Leo stood too, reaching for him, his hand grasping at air. No, Julian said, stepping back. 1 step. 2. Each one a mile. You have a husband. You are married. I am your doctor. This, this was a mistake. A neurochemical reaction exacerbated by the trauma. Transference. Chapter 7 of Kaplan's. It's not transference. Leo cried, his voice breaking the quiet of the park. A jogger glanced over. A squirrel fled. I mean, the memory is real, I can feel it, but… Julian, listen to me. This isn't. You need to go back to the hospital, Julian said, turning away. He couldn't look at Leo. If he looked at Leo, he would crumble. He would beg. He would say things like, please don't have a husband, and I was starting to believe you, and I haven't felt this way in my entire life, and I'm terrified. I will arrange a taxi. You should contact your spouse. Julian, please. Julian walked away. Not running, because running was undignified, and also because his legs felt like they were filled with concrete. But walking fast. Fast enough that Leo, still unsteady on his feet, couldn't follow without risking another fall. He walked all the way back across the street, through the hospital entrance, past the reception desk where Patricia was arranging flowers and humming Elvis, down the corridor into his office. He locked the door. He turned off the light. He sat in the dark. He stared at his hands. The hands that had almost held Leo's face. The hands that had almost pulled him close. The hands that were now empty and would remain empty, because Leo had a husband, and Julian had a career, and the universe was exactly as cruel and indifferent as he had always believed. You knew this would happen, he told himself, his inner voice adopting the clinical tone of a case study. Patient presents with amnesia and associated disinhibition. Patient develops attachment to primary care provider. Attachment resolves upon memory recovery. Case closed. Write it up. Submit to journal. Move on. He stayed in the dark for an hour. The protein bar sat on his desk, still judging. His phone buzzed. Sarah, where are you? Leo came back. He's in his room. He's freaking out. He tried to discharge himself AMA, but he couldn't find his shoes. Julian typed back, his fingers heavy. Let him go. He has a husband to go home to. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. He says he doesn't know where the husband is. He says he doesn't remember the husband's face. Only that the marriage exists. He says he needs you, Julian. He's crying. Julian stared at the screen. The light from the phone illuminated the tears on his own face. He hadn't noticed them until now. He typed, transfer his care to Dr. Martinez. I am recusing myself due to personal conflict of interest. He turned the phone off. He sat in the dark for another hour. Then he went home to his empty apartment, where he ate a protein bar for dinner and did not sleep. The next morning, Julian arrived at work with dark circles that had dark circles, a resolve of reinforced steel, and a tie that he had knotted incorrectly because his hands were still shaking, and he refused to examine why. He would be professional. He would treat Leo like any other patient. No, he wouldn't treat Leo at all because he had recused himself. He would facilitate the discharge process through Dr. Martinez, sign the necessary paperwork, and never speak to Leo again. He would go back to his protein bars and his Friday night medical journals and his perfectly adequate life that did not include piano-playing amnesiacs with honey-gold eyes and a confoundingly inconvenient husband. He walked to room 304. Force of habit. He didn't mean to. His feet simply carried him there, the traders operating on 5 days of muscle memory. He stopped outside the door. He took a deep breath. He opened it. The room was empty. Not just unoccupied, stripped. The bed was made. The monitors were off. The balloons were gone. Even the sad jelly swan had been cleaned away. Julian's stomach dropped through the floor, through the basement, through the earth's crust, and into the mantle. He left. Dr. Thorne. Sarah materialized beside him like a Scrubs-wearing apparition. Her expression was urgent, excited, and thoroughly, annoyingly delighted. He's not here. He's in the waiting room. He refused to leave without seeing you. He slept in the chair. Larry gave him a blanket. I recused myself. Yeah, I got your text. Dr. Martinez also got your text. She said, and I quote, tell Julian to stop being a dramatic idiot and go talk to his boyfriend. She's very direct. He's not my. Also, Sarah interrupted, grabbing Julian's arm. Someone else is here. Julian's blood went cold. Someone else. The husband, Sarah whispered, her eyes wide with the gleam of a person witnessing a telenovela unfold in real time. Or at least, someone. He showed up about 10 minutes ago. Leo is confused. Very confused. You need to go down there. Julian felt a fresh wave of pain crash over him like ice water. Of course, the husband had arrived. The real life had come to reclaim Leo, to pull him back into the fog that had cleared, into the world where Julian was nobody. Fine, Julian said, straightening his incorrectly knotted tie. I'll speak to them. Then we'll discharge him. Then it's over. He walked to the waiting room. It was a small space with uncomfortable blue chairs, a dying potted plant, and a fish tank that contained 3 lethargic goldfish who had clearly given up on life. Motivational posters lined the walls. Healing starts here. And every day is a gift. Julian had always hated those posters. They felt like lies printed on glossy paper. Leo was sitting in one of the blue chairs. He looked pale, exhausted, and utterly wretched. His eyes were red-rimmed. His hair, for the first time since Julian had known him, was unstyled. He looked human in a way that the charming, flirtatious Leo hadn't. Raw, stripped, real. Sitting next to Leo was a man. The man was a lot. He was wearing a sequined blazer in electric violet. Not subtly sequined, aggressively sequined, the kind of garment that could be seen from space and probably violated several municipal noise ordinances despite being a visual phenomenon. He was wearing sunglasses indoors, which Julian normally found unforgivable, but these sunglasses had rhinestones on the frames, so they were operating on a different plane of existence entirely. His hair was dyed electric blue, styled into a pompadour that defied both gravity and good taste. He was eating a bag of flamin' hot Cheetos with the casual intensity of a man who had never once worried about staining his fingers, his clothes, or his dignity. He was talking, very fast, very loudly. And I told him, Marcus, you cannot just eat the evidence, that is tampering. That is a federal crime probably. But he did it anyway. The little gremlin ate the whole receipt right in front of the IRS lady, and she just stared at him, and I said, Leo looked up as Julian approached. Their eyes met. Julian felt the impact like a physical force. Julian, Leo said. His voice was small. Julian straightened his spine, deployed the professional tone. Mr. Vance, I understand your husband has arrived. The man in the sequin blazer stopped mid-sentence. He lowered his rhinestone sunglasses, revealing sharp dark eyes that were currently scanning Julian with the intensity of a laser beam. Husband? The man said. Who's the husband? Are we doing improv? Because I didn't prepare a character. Julian blinked. You're not the husband? The man cackled. It was a full-body cackle, the kind that involved throwing his head back, slapping his knee, and sending Cheeto dust flying in a small orange explosion. Me? Married to Leo. The man gestured between himself and Leo with a Cheeto-stained finger. Honey. Sweetheart. Baby doctor with the cute glasses. I'm Marcus. I'm the best friend. And the business partner. And the emergency contact. And the person who pays the rent when this disaster, he pointed at Leo, forgets because he's in the creative zone. I am not his husband. I would rather marry one of those depressed fish. He pointed at the fish tank. One of the goldfish drifted listlessly past a plastic castle. Julian stared at Marcus. He stared at Leo. He stared at the goldfish who offered no clarity. You're not the husband, Julian repeated. Do I look like a husband? Marcus demanded, standing up and gesturing at his blazer. This is a statement piece, darling. This is couture chaos. Husbands don't wear sequins. Well, good ones do, but not to hospitals. And I am emphatically, categorically, flamboyantly not married to Leo Vance. We're like siblings. Toxic, codependent, emotionally enmeshed siblings who share a Netflix password and fight about whose turn it is to buy toilet paper, but siblings. Leo looked at Julian, his eyes wide with desperate hope. I remembered I was married, but I didn't remember who. I just had this feeling, this certainty. Marcus sat back down, cramming more Cheetos into his mouth. Yeah, see, here's the thing, he said, spraying a fine mist of orange crumbs. Leo is a creative type. And by creative type, I mean his brain is basically a soup of fiction and reality at the best of times. Now add a concussion. He made an explosion gesture with his hands. Orange dust mushroomed. Leo, Marcus continued, turning to his friend. Tell the hot doctor what you do for a living. I'm a writer, Leo said quietly. I write romance novels. The floor tilted beneath Julian's feet. Romance novels. Yeah, Marcus said. Cheesy, over-the-top, melodramatic romance novels. You know the kind. Forbidden love, dramatic misunderstandings. The hero has a jawline that could cut glass. There's always a rainstorm at the climax. He writes under a pen name. LV Hart. Get it? Hart. I thought it was subtle, Leo muttered. It is not subtle, Leo. Nothing about you is subtle. You once sent a singing telegram to a man you'd been on 2 dates with. Marcus turned to Julian. Anyway, the point. Leo has been working on a new book. A very specific book. You want to tell him, Leo? Or should I? Leo rubbed his face. The book is called The Amnesiac's Affair. Julian felt reality rearrange itself around him, like furniture being moved in a dark room. The Amnesiac's Affair. It's about a man who gets amnesia, Leo said miserably, and falls in love with his doctor, and then remembers he has a husband, and it's a whole love triangle tragedy thing. Marcus nodded enthusiastically. The husband is a character based on me, by the way. Leo writes me into all his books. In this one, I'm a devastatingly handsome architect with a mysterious past. I told him the mysterious past was too much, but he said it added texture. Julian leaned against the wall. He needed the wall. The wall was the only stable thing in the universe right now. So, Julian said slowly, each word deliberate. You wrote a novel about an amnesiac patient who falls for his doctor. Then you actually got amnesia. And your brain mixed up the plot with reality, Leo finished. The character in the book is married. I'm not. I've never been married. I've been single for 3 years. My last relationship ended because he said I was too intense. You are too intense, Marcus confirmed. But the amnesia, it scrambled everything. The book's plot felt like a memory. The character's husband felt like my husband. It was like my brain couldn't tell the difference between fiction and autobiography. Julian stared at him. The relief that was flooding his body was so overwhelming that he felt dizzy with it. The crushing weight on his chest, the one that had kept him awake all night, the one that had turned his perfectly balanced life into a disaster zone. It lifted. It didn't just lift. It evaporated, replaced by a sensation so light and bright that Julian felt genuinely concerned he might be having a neurological event of his own. And then came the anger. You told me you were married, Julian said. His voice was calm, dangerously calm, the calm before a very educated storm. I thought I was, Leo pleaded, standing up. My brain was a blender, Julian. Fiction, reality, Celine Dion. It was all mixed together. I genuinely believed it. The emotion was real. The conviction was real. The memory was fake. Marcus supplied helpfully, crunching a Cheeto. The memory was fake, like a movie trailer for a film that doesn't exist. It felt real, Leo whispered. Marcus stood up, brushing Cheeto crumbs off his sequined blazer with the nonchalance of a man who had been through this kind of chaos before. Okay, well, my job here is done. I confirmed the non-marriage. I provided context. I defended my honor as a fictional architect. I'm gonna go find the cafeteria and see if they have those little pudding cups. He started walking, then paused, turning back to Julian. Take care of him, Doc, Marcus said, lowering the rhinestone sunglasses to look Julian dead in the eye. He's a handful. He's dramatic. He once cried during a car insurance commercial. But he's a good handful. And for the record, he glanced at Leo, then back at Julian. He's been talking about you non-stop, not as a character in a book, as a real person. The way he talks about you. I've known Leo for 15 years, And I've never heard that tone. Marcus winked. The sequin blazer approves. He sauntered off toward the hallway. They heard him ask Larry for directions to the pudding. Julian and Leo were alone. The fish tank bubbled quietly in the background. The goldfish circling their plastic castle with the resigned persistence of creatures who had accepted their lot in life. So, Julian said. His arms were crossed. His glasses were slightly askew. His tie was still knotted wrong. He looked, according to Leo's later description, like an angry librarian who was trying very hard not to smile. So, Leo said. He was standing 3 feet away. His hands were clasped in front of him. He looked, according to Julian's clinical assessment, like a man who was terrified and hopeful in equal measure. Fiction, Julian said. Technically, Leo said, taking one small step closer. You gave me a heart attack with fiction. An emotional heart attack. Not a real one. Your cardiovascular health is excellent. I asked Sarah. You made me think. Julian stopped. He pressed his lips together. He looked at the ceiling. You made me think I was going to lose you to a person who doesn't exist. Julian. Leo took another step. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. My brain. Your brain, Julian interrupted. Wrote a romance novel and then lived it. That is the most absurd neurological case I have ever encountered. And I once treated a man who could only speak in limericks after a stroke. He sounds fun. He was not fun. He rhymed everything with Nantucket. Leo was close now. Close enough that Julian could see the remnants of tears on his cheeks, the shadows under his eyes, the way his lower lip trembled slightly. Julian, Leo said, his voice dropping to something barely above a whisper. The book is fiction. The husband is fiction. The amnesia was real and it's clearing now. I can feel the fog lifting, piece by piece. But the feelings? The ones I had for you from the moment you walked into that room with your clipboard and your stormy ocean eyes and your absolute refusal to be charmed. He paused. Those aren't in any book. I didn't write those. I didn't plan them. I didn't outline them in a 3-act structure with rising action and a satisfying climax. Please stop using literary terms, Julian murmured. I didn't know I'd feel this way about you, Leo said. And I know that now that the fog is clearing, now that I can separate Leo the person from Leo the character, I know it more clearly than anything else. You are not a plot device. You are not a love interest. You are the real thing. Julian looked at him. He looked at the hope, the fear, the honesty. He looked at the unstyled hair and the wrinkled shirt and the red eyes. He looked at the man who had played Chopin in a hospital atrium, who had ordered Italian food through a heartbroken security guard, who had folded jelly into a frog swan and called it art. You lied to me, Julian said, though there was no heat in it. The heat had left. Something warmer had replaced it. I was confused. My brain was a blender, a smoothie of bad decisions and good intentions. You compared my eyes to a stormy ocean. They are like a stormy ocean. That's not a lie. That's a meteorological observation. Julian uncrossed his arms. Felt like laying down weapons. Leo, I am still technically your doctor. Discharge me, Leo said immediately, stepping into Julian's space. Sign the papers. I'm healed. My head is fine. I remember my cat. I remember my postal code. I remember that I hate cilantro and that Marcus owes me $40. I'm ready to go. I can't just discharge you because you want to date me. Discharge me because I'm neurologically stable, Leo countered. All scans clear. Memory returning. Gait normal. Pupils reactive. Then date me. As a civilian. As Leo Vance, romance novelist and cat owner. Not patient 402. Julian looked at the discharge papers on the clipboard that Sarah had stealthily placed on the reception desk nearby. She was lurking by the door, pretending to water a plastic plant that had been plastic for 6 years and had never once needed water. Julian picked up the pen. He looked at Leo. If I sign this, there are conditions. Anything, Leo said. Name them. 1. No more lying about husbands. Real or fictional. Deal. No more fictional spouses. I'll kill the character off in Chapter 12. 2. No more ordering illegal Italian food into the hospital. Larry almost got fired. Deal. Although Patricia said the pasta improved morale on the third floor by 40%. 3. No more playing piano in the atrium without authorization. That one's hard. But, deal. 4. Julian said, signing the discharge paper with a flourish that made his usually precise handwriting look almost reckless. You have to let me take you to dinner. A real dinner. At a real restaurant. With a real reservation. Not cafeteria sushi eaten next to a toddler throwing crackers at a service dog. Leo's smile could have powered the entire hospital wing. Could have powered the block. Could have powered a small city. Deal, he whispered. Julian handed him the papers. You're discharged, Mr. Vance. Leo took the papers, looked at them for approximately 1 second, and set them on the reception desk. Then he stepped into Julian's space. Fully, completely, with no clipboard between them. Can I hug my doctor? Leo asked. Technically, Julian said, his voice rough. The doctor-patient relationship terminated 30 seconds ago, when I signed that paper. So technically, you would be hugging a civilian. Can I hug my civilian? Julian opened his arms. Leo hugged him. It was tight, warm, and desperate in the way that only reunions can be. Reunions after wars, after storms, after the terrible, brief separation of a single night that felt like a decade. Leo smelled like hospital soap and Larry's borrowed cologne and something underneath both that was just him. Julian rested his chin on Leo's shoulder and closed his eyes. He felt Leo's heartbeat against his own chest. It was fast. His was fast too. Matching rhythms, he thought. Synchronization of cardiac output due to physical proximity and emotional stimulus. Or maybe just love. Thank you, Leo whispered into Julian's ear. Don't thank me yet, Julian murmured. I haven't told you where I'm taking you for dinner. Anywhere, Leo said. Anywhere at all. In the background, Sarah set down the plastic plant and wiped her eyes. Larry, who had wandered over with Marcus and 2 pudding cups, sniffled loudly. I'm not crying, Larry announced. I have allergies. You don't have allergies, Larry, Sarah said. I do now. 2 weeks later. The restaurant was small, intimate, and Julian had verified this personally with the manager. Contained no karaoke stage, no piano, no stage of any kind, and no speakers mounted at head height. He had also confirmed the emergency exits, the lighting level, ambient, not romantic, though it was objectively romantic, and the dessert menu. He was thorough. He was a scientist. He was also nervous enough to have changed his shirt 3 times, which was unprecedented in his adult life. Julian sat at the table, adjusting his napkin with the precision of a man performing surgery. He was wearing a suit, not his work suit, not the gray goes with everything armor he wore to the hospital. This one was navy blue, softer, and he'd bought it that afternoon in a fit of panic that Sarah had described as adorable and Marcus, via text, had described as adorable and Marcus, via text, had described as gay panic manifesting through retail therapy, which is valid. The door opened. Julian looked up. Leo walked in. He was wearing a sweater, cream-colored, cashmere or something close to it, the kind of garment that made you want to reach out and touch it. His hair was styled but not overdone, and he was smiling. Not the megawatt performer's grin from the hospital, but something quieter, private, meant for one person. He spotted Julian. The smile widened, and Julian felt it in his chest like a key turning in a lock. Leo walked over, ignoring the host entirely, weaving between tables with the confidence of a man who had once performed Elvis in a hospital atrium and had no remaining capacity for social inhibition. He sat down. You're early, Leo said. I'm punctual, Julian corrected, straightening his water glass. There's a difference. Same thing when you're excited. Leo reached across the table. Julian let him take his hand. Felt natural now. No guilt. No ethical alarm bells. No imaginary husband lurking in the neural fog. Just skin on skin. How's the head? Julian asked. Clear, Leo said. Memories are back. All of them. Including some I'd rather forget, like the time I wore a fedora to a book signing. Marcus has photos. He's holding them for blackmail. Sensible man. I did have one dream, though, Leo said, his eyes sparkling. Last night, you were a pirate. A pirate? Yeah, you had an eye patch. And a parrot. The parrot kept telling me to check my vitals. Squawk. Blood pressure. Squawk. Very on brand for a pirate owned by a neurologist. Julian tried not to laugh. He failed. It came out as a snort, which was undignified, which made Leo beam. And the book? Julian asked, recovering his composure. The Amnesiac's affair? Leo winced dramatically. I'm rewriting the ending. In the original outline, the husband shows up and it's a tragedy. The patient goes back to his marriage. The doctor is left alone. Very sad. Very literary. Very award-worthy. And now the husband is a fictional construct based on the patient's creative brain mixing up reality and fiction, and the doctor gets the guy. Leo grinned. Much better ending. My editor agrees. She said the original was needlessly depressing. She also said, and I quote, "If you don't give the doctor a happy ending, I will drop you as a client and also unfriend you on all social media platforms." Your editor sounds terrifying. She's 5'1" and she once made a publisher cry. I adore her. The waiter appeared. Julian ordered wine. A good one. Not the house red he usually settled for because taste was a luxury he rarely indulged. Leo ordered garlic bread immediately, before even looking at the menu. That's your appetizer? Julian asked. Garlic bread is always my appetizer. And my main course. And my dessert. Garlic bread is a lifestyle, Julian. They ordered. They talked. They talked about everything and nothing. Leo's cat Machi, who was currently staying with Marcus and had already knocked over a lamp, a vase, and Marcus's self-esteem. Julian's plan for a private clinic, smaller and more personal than St. Mary's. A place where he could actually know his patients instead of processing them like items on a conveyor belt. Leo's upcoming book deadline. Julian's mother, who had called him that morning and said, "Sarah tells me you're seeing someone," which had prompted a 15-minute conversation about how Sarah had obtained his mother's phone number and whether this constituted a HIPAA violation. It doesn't, Leo said. HIPAA protects patient information, not doctor dating information. How do you know that? Research for the book. I know a disturbing amount about medical law. Did you know that in some states? Stop, please. It wasn't the frantic, high-stakes conversation of the hospital. It was slower, easier, but the tension was still there, humming beneath the surface like a current, making every accidental brush of fingers feel deliberate, making every shared glance feel like a secret. When the bill came, Julian reached for it. Leo slapped his hand away with the speed of a man who had been planning this moment. I got this, Leo said. I am a doctor. I am fiscally comfortable. I sold the rights to my book series last week, Leo said, with a smugness that bordered on criminal. The one with the Amnesiac. Six-figure deal. The publisher loved the authenticity of the emotional journey. They said it felt lived in, because it was lived in. By me. In a hospital. You monetized your brain injury, Julian said, awed and appalled in equal measure. I monetized the story, Leo corrected, flagging down the waiter. And I'm using the advance to buy you dessert. Sit down and accept it. Julian sat down. A massive chocolate lava cake arrived. 2 spoons. Share, Leo asked. Share, Julian agreed. They ate the cake in companionable silence. It was rich, warm, and messy. Chocolate sauce dripping onto the white plate in abstract patterns that Leo would later describe in his book as a metaphor for the beautiful chaos of unexpected love. And Julian would describe as dessert. Julian, Leo said, wiping a smudge of chocolate from the corner of his mouth with his thumb. Yes, I know I said the husband was fictional, and I know the amnesia scrambled everything. But there was one thing I remembered while I was in the hospital. One thing that wasn't in the book. One thing that was completely, entirely real. Julian set down his spoon. What? The feeling of waiting, Leo said. I told you about it in the park. I thought it was just poetic rambling. But when my memory came back, I remembered where it came from. Where? 2 years ago, Leo said. I was at a medical conference. Not as a doctor, as a writer. I was researching neurological conditions for the book. I snuck in with a borrowed badge and a confident walk. Julian stared at him. 2 years ago. The neuroscience symposium at the Marriott. That's the one. Leo's eyes were bright. There was a panel on memory formation, and one of the speakers was extraordinary. He was serious and precise and a little intimidating. He wore wire-rimmed glasses and a gray suit, and he talked about the hippocampus like it was the most beautiful thing in the universe. Julian felt the blood drain from his face. That was my lecture. I know, Leo said softly. I sat in the back row. I took notes. Not about the neuroscience, well, some about the neuroscience, it was genuinely fascinating, but mostly about you. The way you gestured when you got excited. The way you pushed your glasses up with your index finger. The way you paused before making a joke. Like you were calibrating whether the audience deserved it. I don't make jokes in lectures. You made one. About Phineas Gage. The audience laughed. You looked surprised, like you hadn't expected it. And I thought. Leo's voice dropped. I wish I could know him. Julian was not crying. He was experiencing lacrimal gland activation due to environmental stimuli. And then I left, Leo continued. I went home. I started writing the book. And I forgot. The memory of you went into the fog, the creative fog, the one where real life and fiction blend together. I used you, without knowing it, as the template for the doctor character. Your glasses, your seriousness, your storms in your eyes thing. I do not have a storms in my eyes thing. You absolutely do. Leo reached across the table and took Julian's hand. And then I hit my head, and the fog shifted. And the real memory, the memory of you at that podium making a joke about Phineas Gage surfaced. But my brain filed it with the fiction. So when I woke up and saw you standing in my hospital room, you recognized me, Julian whispered. Not consciously, but something in my brain said, there he is. The one you've been waiting for. Leo squeezed his hand. So maybe the amnesia wasn't a reset. Maybe it was a detour. A really weird, concussion-induced detour that took me 2 years and a karaoke accident to complete. But it got me here. To this table. With this cake. With you. Julian reached across the table. He took Leo's face in his hands, gently, carefully, the way he handled everything that mattered. He didn't care about the restaurant, or the other diners, or the waiter hovering with the check, or the elderly couple at the next table who were watching them with undisguised interest. You can say hello now, Julian whispered. Properly. Hello, Julian, Leo said. Hello, Leo. Julian leaned in and kissed him. It was gentle at first, a question, a hypothesis, a tentative data point. Leo answered by leaning into it, his hand coming up to rest on the back of Julian's neck, his fingers threading into the short hair at Julian's nape. The kiss deepened, becoming a conclusion, a proof, a promise written in a language that didn't require peer review. When they pulled apart, the restaurant seemed brighter. The elderly couple at the next table applauded softly. The waiter wiped his eye and left the check in a tasteful leather folder. So, Leo said, slightly breathless, does this mean I get a discount at your new clinic? Julian laughed. It was a real laugh, unburdened, the kind that comes from a place that has been locked for years and is finally open. No, Julian said, but you get free consultations. Better, Leo grinned. They walked out of the restaurant hand in hand. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of rain and the distant sound of a saxophone from the jazz bar 2 blocks over. Where to now? Leo asked. My place? I have a cat. He's judgmental, condescending, and occasionally violent. But he likes guests. Specifically, he likes sitting on guests and refusing to move. Your place, Julian agreed. They walked down the street. Car honked. Someone laughed in a cafe nearby. The city was alive, chaotic, and messy. Everything Julian had spent his life trying to avoid and was now, somehow, walking toward. You know, Leo said, swinging their joined hands like a pendulum, I'm thinking of writing a sequel. Oh no. Oh yes. The doctor and the husband. But this time the husband is real, and he is the doctor. Plot twist. Please don't. It'll be a bestseller. My editor is already excited. She said, "Give me more of the grumpy doctor." Direct quote. I am not grumpy. Julian. You once described Thanksgiving as a logistical nightmare dressed up in gravy. That is peak grumpy. It is a logistical nightmare. And that's why I love you, Leo said. He stopped walking. They were under a streetlight, the kind that casts a warm amber glow and makes everything look like a movie. I love every grumpy, analytical, protein bar eating part of you. Julian looked at him, really looked, took in the honey eyes, the rumpled hair, the smile that had walked through every wall Julian had ever built. He pulled Leo close by the front of his sweater. Your sweater is very soft, Julian observed. It's cashmere. I approve of cashmere. I'll buy you one. I don't need. I'll buy you 12. One for each month. A cashmere calendar. That is fiscally irresponsible. I got a 6-figure book deal, Julian. I can afford the cashmere calendar. Julian kissed him again, under the streetlight, in the middle of the sidewalk. A passing teenager yelled, "Get it!" from a bicycle, which broke the moment but not the feeling. Come on, Julian said. Let's go meet Machi. He's going to love you, Leo promised as they started walking. He's a cat. He'll tolerate me at best. No, I know him. He has excellent taste. He only knocks over the belongings of people he doesn't respect. If he leaves your things alone, it means he accepts you. And if he knocks something over, then we negotiate. I'll buy you a replacement. They arrived at Leo's apartment. 6th floor. The elevator was broken, which Leo claimed was character building, and Julian claimed was a code violation. They climbed the stairs, Leo slightly ahead, Julian watching him for signs of dizziness that were entirely unnecessary at this point but provided a convenient excuse to watch him. Leo unlocked the door. The apartment was small, warm, and chaotic in the specific way of creative people. Bookshelves overflowing, a desk buried under manuscripts, a corkboard covered in plot diagrams and character sketches. One of the sketches, Julian noticed with a jolt, was a man in wire-rimmed glasses. Is that you? Leo admitted, following his gaze. I drew that after the conference. 2 years ago. I pinned it up for character reference. And then I forgot what it was referencing. Julian stared at the sketch. It was rough, impressionistic, but unmistakably him. The glasses, the jawline, the slightly exasperated expression that apparently transcended medium. A fat orange cat appeared from behind the couch. He was enormous, easily 15 pounds, with a face that conveyed the specific disdain of a creature who considered himself the apex predator of the apartment. Machi looked at Julian. Julian looked at Machi. Machi walked over, sniffed Julian's shoe, and sat on his foot. He likes you, Leo exclaimed. He's sitting on my foot. That's love in cat language. In medical language, that's a circulation issue. But Julian didn't move his foot. He let Machi sit there, warm and heavy and absurd, while Leo made tea and talked about his next chapter, and the apartment filled with the sound of someone else's life. Messy, loud, unpredictable, and exactly what Julian hadn't known he needed. Later, they sat on the couch. Machi had relocated to Julian's lap, which Leo described as unprecedented, and basically a marriage proposal in cat culture. Leo was tucked under Julian's arm, reading passages from his manuscript aloud. The doctor looked at the patient, Leo read, and knew that this was the beginning of something he could not diagnose. He looked up. Too cheesy. Horrendously cheesy, Julian said. I'm keeping it. Of course you are. Epilogue. 6 months later. The clinic opened on a Tuesday because Julian believed in starting things on unremarkable days. If it can succeed on a Tuesday, he told Leo, it can succeed on any day. The clinic was called Thorne Neurology. It was small, with warm lighting, real plants, not plastic, and a waiting room that had comfortable chairs, a decent fish tank, and motivational posters that Julian had personally selected for medical accuracy. Healing starts with accurate diagnosis was his favorite. Sarah was the head nurse, because Julian had learned long ago that Sarah was an unstoppable force and the only viable strategy was to align himself with her trajectory. She ran the front desk with the efficiency of a military commander and the warmth of a kindergarten teacher. Leo had an office in the back. It was supposed to be a storage room, but he had claimed it through squatters' rights and a persistent refusal to leave. He wrote his books there, surrounded by manuscript pages, coffee cups, and a small framed photo of Julian looking annoyed in a hospital hallway, which Leo had titled Love at First Scowl. Machi had his own bed under Leo's desk. He had knocked over the printer twice. One Tuesday afternoon, 6 months to the day since Leo had fallen off that karaoke stage. Julian walked into Leo's office to find him typing with the furious intensity of a man possessed. "What are you writing?" Julian asked, leaning against the doorframe. "A new idea," Leo said, not looking up. His fingers flew over the keyboard. Working title: The Neurologist's Diagnosis. Subtitle: A Love Story in 3 Acts and 1 Concussion. Original, Julian drawled. "Shoo, I'm at the good part. The part where they get married." Julian's heart, which had been beating at a perfectly normal resting rate, suddenly decided to audition for a drum solo. Married. Leo stopped typing. He spun his chair around to face Julian. He was wearing the cream cashmere sweater, Julian's favorite, and his hair was doing the gravity-defying thing, and his eyes were warm and serious and completely, utterly certain. "Well," Leo said, "not legally yet. In the book they do. Chapter 23. I've outlined it. Very romantic. There's a sunset." "There's always a sunset," Julian said. "Sunsets are reliable dramatic devices." "But I was thinking." Leo stood up. Machi, disturbed from his nap, made an offended sound and relocated to the printer. "Maybe we could test the research, for authenticity." Julian's mouth went dry. "Are you proposing to me? In a converted storage room? While I am supposed to be seeing patients?" "I'm multitasking," Leo said. He walked over to Julian. His hand went to his pocket. He pulled out a ring. It wasn't a diamond. It was silver, simple, and engraved with 2 tiny symbols, a brain and a heart, side by side. "I had it custom-made," Leo said, holding it up. The light from the desk lamp caught the silver, making it glow. "Neurology and romance. The 2 things I love most in the world. Well, 3 things. The 3rd thing is standing in front of me, looking like he's about to pass out." "I am not going to pass out," Julian said. He was potentially going to pass out. "I love you, Julian Thorne," Leo said. "I loved you when my brain was broken, and I love you now that it's fixed. I loved you when I thought I had a fictional husband, and I love you now that I know the only husband I want is you." "That sentence had too many clauses," Julian whispered. "I'm a writer. I use clauses." Leo held out his hand. "So, will you be my husband? For real this time? No amnesia. No fiction. No karaoke-related head trauma." Julian looked at the ring. He looked at Leo. He looked at Machi, who was sitting on the printer and staring at them with an expression that could have been blessing or contempt. With cats, it was impossible to tell. He looked at the sketch on Leo's corkboard. The one drawn 2 years ago, at a conference, by a stranger who had been waiting for him without knowing it. "Yes," Julian said. Leo's eyes went wide. "Yes? Really? No conditions? No 10-minute rule? No ethical review? No rules?" Julian said, taking the ring and sliding it onto Leo's finger. It fit perfectly because of course it did. Because sometimes, against all evidence and all probability, the universe got things right. Just one request. Anything. No karaoke at the wedding. Leo threw his arms around Julian's neck. "Deal. Absolutely no karaoke. Piano only. And no sequin blazers. I cannot control Marcus." "Try." "I will try," Leo promised and kissed him. The door burst open. Sarah was standing there, phone in hand, tears streaming down her face. Did he do it? Did he do it? He did it, Julian confirmed. I knew it, Sarah shrieked. Larry, Patricia. He said yes. From somewhere in the clinic, Larry's voice boomed. I won the BET. $50. Pay up. Patricia's voice, somehow audible from the waiting room. I brought champagne. Marcus appeared in the doorway behind Sarah, wearing a new sequin blazer, this one in gold, and holding his phone up. I'm live streaming this. My followers need to know. The book is real, people. The book is real. How did you all get in here? Julian demanded. Sarah gave us the code, Marcus said. The code is supposed to be confidential. Love is not confidential, Julian, Sarah said firmly. Leo laughed, burying his face in Julian's shoulder. Welcome to the family, Dr. Thorne. Julian looked around at the chaos. Sarah crying, Larry cheering, Patricia popping champagne, Marcus narrating to his phone like a nature documentary host, Machi knocking the printer off the desk in what may or may not have been a gesture of congratulations. It was loud. It was messy. It was completely, categorically, beautifully out of his control. Julian tightened his arms around Leo, pressed his lips to Leo's temple, and smiled. Best Tuesday ever, he murmured. And for the first time in his life, Dr. Julian Thorne, the man who had believed in data, in synapses, in the predictable rhythm of a human heartbeat, knew that some things couldn't be measured or scanned or filed in a chart. Some things, like falling in love with a man who fell off a karaoke stage, lost his memory, and invented a husband, just had to be lived. And he was finally, gloriously, ready to live them. The end.